Are you currently pregnant and feeling confused about the intensity you can train at? If this is you, trust me, you are not alone, and I completely understand why you might feel this way, considering the vast amounts of conflicting and contradictory information there is out there when it comes to training during pregnancy. And if there's one piece of outdated advice that just keeps popping back up like a game of whack-a-mole, it would be limiting your heart rate to 140 BPM. So in this short video, I'm going to explain why the 140 BPM heart rate limit for pregnant women is outdated and should not be used to monitor your training intensity during pregnancy. And the recommendation of limiting a pregnant woman's heart rate to 140 BPM originates back to the 1980s. And let me tell you, the way women train has evolved considerably since the 80s, and along with it, how women train during pregnancy. Well, mostly anyway. Now, at the time, back in the 80s, there was a concern that high intensity exercise during pregnancy could potentially compromise blood flow to the baby, leading to adverse outcomes. Now, because of this, and based on research done at the time, the 140 BPM guideline was introduced in 1985 by ACOG, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. But the really interesting thing about this outdated guideline was that it was based on limited research, primarily involving animal research. Now, understandably, the physiological responses of animals, pregnant animals, are going to be completely different to human pregnant women. And the human studies done at the time were both small in scale and did not conclusively demonstrate that the higher maternal heart rates posed a risk to the baby. And when it comes to heart rate in general during pregnancy, it's really important to remember that your heart rate is going to be higher than normal throughout the entirety of your pregnancy for a number of reasons. Your blood volume alone increases by approximately 45% during pregnancy to help supply oxygen and nutrients to your baby. This alone means that your heart has to work harder to pump the extra blood, leading, you guessed it, to an increased heart rate. Your cardiac output, which is the amount of blood pumped by the heart per minute, increases by 30 to 50% during pregnancy. And again, you guessed it, your heart rate has to increase by 10 to 25% above your pre-pregnancy baseline to be able to handle that extra workload. Then you have other factors like increased metabolic demands, hormonal changes, and something called reduced vascular resistance, adding to your elevated heart rate during pregnancy. So when you think about all of these changes to your heart rate, limiting a woman's heart rate to 140 BPM isn't really allowing her to raise her heart rate that much when exercising, considering pregnancy already elevates it. Which brings me to a whole other point, in that having a blanket limitation of 140 BPM for all pregnant women is not honouring the individual and their pre-pregnancy fitness levels. For those who have a high level of fitness going into pregnancy, 140 BPM is extremely limiting. And I would go as far as to say, limiting a serious recreational athlete or a professional athlete to 140 BPM during pregnancy could actually be detrimental to their physical and mental health and well-being. So with the way women train changing, with more women training to a higher capacity, a higher level than ever before, how we monitor ourselves during pregnancy needs to change along with it, which is why RPE and the talk tests are a much better way and more individualized way of monitoring the intensity you're working at during pregnancy. Because an elite athlete's RPE 7 or 8 is going to be very different to mine, and mine is going to be very different again to Jane down the street. And your pre-pregnancy fitness level and training age is a huge factor in the intensity you can work at during pregnancy, with research showing pregnant women who were active pre-pregnancy can safely exercise at higher intensities without risk to their babies. Now, of course, we need more research to be done in this area, and we've got some incredible female athletes helping pave the way forwards with research around training intensity during pregnancy. But when it comes to RPE, or rate of perceived exertion, from my perspective, you would want to be sitting around a 7 out of 10 with the occasional spikes up to 8 or 8.5 absolute max. And personally, I wouldn't want the women that I coach going any higher than that. And remember, this is completely relative to the individual. And I think at the end of the day, with so many things changing during pregnancy and the sheer volume of contradictory information there is out there, just training during pregnancy can be hard enough as it is. And we want our pregnant population training. We want them doing conditioning sessions. We want them to feel like they're still able to do many of the things that they love during pregnancies when they're already feeling like they're giving up so much. But especially because of the benefits to both the mother and the baby being vast when it comes to exercise during pregnancy. But sadly, too many women are just opting out of training altogether during their pregnancies and choose to just say walk, swim, or do Pilates. It's just not enough. So something so simple as making the intensity you can work at more individualized takes some of the complexity out of it, allowing pregnant women to make choices based on their own training age and experience and fitness levels pre-pregnancy, rather than being forced into a blanket 140 BPM constraint. So the next time you're told to keep your heart rate to 140 BPM during pregnancy, and as much as we know our healthcare providers do an amazing job, don't be surprised if this recommendation comes from them, but that's a whole other story. But whoever it comes from, please feel free to share this video with them, because the current guidelines no longer specify a heart rate limit. Instead, we want you focusing on individualized rate of perceived exertion and the talk test instead. So that's it from me today. I really hope this video helped. And of course, if you'd like more in-depth pregnancy-specific content, feel free to apply to my complimentary but private community, the Preggy Training Crew. The link is in my bio.